Elves and Dwarves. As Eru Ilúvatar described them, the chosen and the adopted. Throughout the history of Middle-earth, these two races have occasionally formed great friendships, yet more often they have stood in opposition to one another. Suspicion and hostility between them lasted for thousands of years. But why do elves and dwarves dislike each other? Where does this ancient rivalry come from? To understand this, we must first look at the creation of both races. Elves were created by Eru Ilúvatar together with men, and they are known as the children of Ilúvatar. By their nature, they love the living world. Forests, rivers, trees, and all growing things are deeply important to them. Dwarves, however, came into existence in a different way. They were created by Aulë, one of the Valar. Aulë was renowned among the Valar for his skill in crafting and smithing. But when he created the dwarves, Aulë did not yet know about the children of Ilúvatar. Because of this, he shaped them entirely according to his own nature. Aulë valued stone, metal, and craftsmanship above all else. Naturally, the dwarves he created shared these same passions. They became masters of mining, stonework, and metal craft. But forests, trees, and growing things held little interest for them. This difference created a fundamental contrast between the two races. Aulë's wife Yavanna soon realized this. Being deeply connected to nature, she feared that the dwarves would cut down forests and harm the natural world. So she created protectors for the forests. These beings were the Ents, the shepherds of the trees. And because of their role, the Ents never had much affection for the dwarves, whose love for stone and metal often came at the cost of the forests. The first tension between elves and dwarves appeared in Beleriand. A group known as the petty dwarves, smaller than other dwarves, had already settled there before many others arrived. When the elves first encountered them, they had never seen dwarves before. Because of this, they believed these creatures might be corrupted beings created by Melkor, similar to orcs. As a result, the elves began hunting them. Although this conflict came from misunderstanding rather than hatred, it marked the first clash between the two races. The first true war between elves and dwarves occurred in the First Age in the year 502. The dwarves of Nogrod created a magnificent necklace known as the Nauglamír. This necklace was adorned with precious jewels brought from Valinor and was gifted to Finrod Felagund. Later, Finrod's realm of Nargothrond was destroyed by the dragon Glaurung, and the Nauglamír remained among the ruined treasures. After Glaurung's death, the last of the petty dwarves, Mîm, returned to claim the treasure. Soon afterward, Hurin arrived at Nargothrond. There, he encountered Mîm, who had once betrayed his son Turin. Hurin killed him and discovered the Nauglamír among the ruins. He then brought the necklace to Thingol, the king of Doriath. Thingol already possessed one of the Silmarils. When he saw the Nauglamír, he desired to combine the Silmaril with the necklace. Dwarven craftsmen from Nogrod were already in Doriath, so Thingol asked them to set the Silmaril into the necklace. When the dwarves saw both the Silmaril and the Nauglamír together, they desired the treasure for themselves. After finishing their work, they refused to return the necklace to Thingol. They claimed that since their ancestors had created the Nauglamír, it rightfully belonged to them. Thingol, proud and arrogant, insulted them and called them a crude and lesser race. Enraged by this insult, the dwarves killed Thingol and attempted to escape with the necklace. However, the elves of Doriath caught and killed them, reclaiming the Nauglamír. Two dwarves managed to escape and return to Nogrod. There, they told a very different version of the story. They claimed that Thingol had refused to pay them and had ordered their deaths. Furious, the dwarves of Nogrod gathered an army and marched on Doriath. A great battle followed, in which many elves and dwarves were slain. In the end, the dwarves won the battle and reclaimed the Nauglamír. But on their journey home, they were ambushed by Beren and the green elves of Osiriand, and they were killed. This tragic chain of events left a deep scar between the two races, creating distrust that would last for thousands of years. About 6,500 years later, tensions between elves and dwarves resurfaced. During the events of The Hobbit, Thranduil, king of the Woodland Realm, captured Thorin Oakenshield and his companions when they entered his lands without permission. Later, the dragon Smaug was slain by Bard the Bowman. After Smaug's death, Bard and Thranduil marched toward Erebor. Bard demanded a share of the treasure to rebuild Laketown, while Thranduil also believed he had a rightful claim. But Thorin refused both of them. As a result, Erebor was besieged. Thranduil did not wish to start a battle. Instead, he planned to force the dwarves into negotiation by cutting off their supplies. Just as war seemed inevitable, Gandalf arrived with news that goblins were approaching. Soon after, elves, men, and dwarves joined forces against the goblins and wargs in the Battle of Five Armies. Many years later, old tensions resurfaced during the Council of Elrond. When Legolas mentioned that Gollum had been allowed to roam freely in the woods rather than being imprisoned, Glóin, Gimli's father, took offense. He remembered his own imprisonment in the Woodland Realm and remarked that the elves had not shown him the same mercy. Gandalf quickly ended the argument before it could escalate. Later, when the Fellowship of the Ring arrived at Lothlorien, the elves were reluctant to allow Gimli to enter. They only agreed if his eyes were blindfolded. Gimli strongly objected to this, feeling insulted and mistrusted. Even though thousands of years had passed since the Great War between elves and dwarves, some elven kingdoms still distrusted them. The exact reason is never clearly explained in the books, but there is a likely explanation. The elves of Doriath, ruled by Thingol, were Sindar. The elves of Lothlorien and the Woodland Realm were Sylvan elves. Both of these groups trace their origins back to the Teleri, meaning they share a common ancestry. Because of this shared heritage, they likely remembered the ancient conflicts with the dwarves and held onto that resentment. Despite their conflicts, there were also moments of great friendship between the two races. This was especially true between the Noldor elves and the dwarves. The Noldor also had great love for craftsmanship and metalwork, which made them more similar to the dwarves than other elven groups. One of the most famous friendships was between Celebrimbor and Narvi. Together, they built the West Gate of Khazad-dûm. The password for the gate was the Elvish word melon, meaning friend. During this time, strong trade and cooperation developed between the elves of Eregion and the dwarves of Khazad-dûm. The most famous friendship between an elf and a dwarf is undoubtedly that of Legolas and Gimli. When the Fellowship arrived in Lothlorien, Galadriel treated Gimli with great respect. In fact, she granted him 3 strands of her hair, something she had once refused even to Feanor. For Gimli, this was an incredible honor. Later, when Éomer spoke disrespectfully about Galadriel, Gimli defended her fiercely. When Éomer threatened Gimli, Legolas immediately stood by his friend. As they journeyed together, Legolas and Gimli grew to understand each other. They realized that the mistakes of the past did not define an entire race. After the War of the Ring, they visited the glittering caves of Helm's Deep and the forest of Fangorn together. Eventually, Legolas invited Gimli to sail with him to the Undying Lands. And so, Gimli became the first dwarf ever to reach Valinor. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. If there are any Middle-earth topics you'd like to see in future videos, feel free to write them in the comments. See you in the next Middle-earth video.